Abortion happens every day. Millions of people around the world will have an abortion each year, but the majority of those people will never talk about their abortion experiences. What if millions of people broke their silence and told the truth about their lives and their choices? This is Melissa Madera in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and you're listening to the Abortion Diary podcast. These are the stories we share.
So throughout high school, I was dating this guy who was what I thought the love of my life, just this extroverted, confident man. And it really attracted me. I loved being around him, and so I tried always to just keep him around me. And we were on and off. He was very, promiscuous, flirtatious, loved being around women, and I was more of having a monotonous relationship. And then, so we broke up, got back together December of 2012, and I was on birth control. I was on a specific type of birth control. So I didn't think anything of it. I was just, right before the holidays, I'm happy. I'm back with the guy that I really, really love. And we had sex. The holidays pass, New Year's pass. School picks back up again because vacation is out. And I'm feeling a little weird, my period always came strict on time, straight 28 days, never missed a period. And I was getting a little nervous. I don't remember quite why, but then I started feeling breast tenderness. My period was a little late, but then I had severe abdominal cramping, a lot of pain. And I remember specifically one day I was on the public transit going home, and I was just in so much pain. And I was talking to my boyfriend at the time and telling him, and he's like, yeah, but there's no way you're pregnant, you're on birth control, etc., etc. So the next day goes, I'm in school, and I just couldn't walk. I couldn't get up to go to my next class. I was again in a lot of pain. So one of my friends rushed me to the hospital. I'm there. My mother meets me at the hospital, and I'm in the emergency room. I remember my doctor was middle-aged, white blonde woman, really sweet. So and she asks me, we have to get pee samples just for regular testing, screening out everything. And I'm like, no. I was so hesitant. No, why? Just because I knew the possibility was in the back of my mind, and I didn't want it to become a reality. I was so hesitant. And she left. She took the sample. My mom was in the room. I'm a little nervous. I start shaking, getting hot. At this point, I'm laying down on the bed of the hospital room with my robe on, and the doctor comes back and she says, and my mom had stepped out of the room, so I felt more comfortable with her giving me any news. And she comes in and she says, she leans over me and she's really close to my face. It was kind of like a intimate moment, and she says, "You're pregnant." Just those 3 words, "You are pregnant." And I froze, and I'm looking at her and I'm like, no, this can't be. I've always been the good girl. I've always been the good girl, whatever that meant, And so everything starts flashing in my mind, like, oh my goodness, why? I've been the girl to get straight A's, to be the one that the family loves, the one that's supposed to do everything right. And going through my mind, I'm like, this is the one thing that I've been trying to avoid even before I started having sex. I started reading on about sex, about sexually transmitted disease, about pregnancies, just so I could avoid that. and I get on birth control so I could avoid. And I guess what had happened was I was on the NuvaRing and it came out and I didn't notice. So it came out while I was using the toilet, and because when I went to go feel around, it wasn't in there. Again, I still didn't think anything of it. But yeah, the doctor comes back in the room and she says, "You're pregnant." And I start getting hot, and I felt like everything in the room was shrinking in on me, and like I was alone. And I'm like, "No, you can't tell me this. Like, my mom's outside the room. She's gonna hear you and I'm gonna crush her world. I'm her daughter. We're like best friends, and I can't believe I betrayed her. I can't believe I betrayed myself." So then they were trying to figure out why I had so much abdominal cramping. And my mom comes back in the room. The doctor says, "Everything's gonna be okay. I won't tell your mother anything that you don't want me to." I'm like, "Okay, so don't mention it to her." And there was this nurse there that I just didn't want around me. Even when I stepped in, she was profiling me, and I just felt so comfortable around her. And my mom comes in and I'm crying, and she's like, "Oh, what's going on? Like, what's happening?" And I was like, "Oh no, I'm just in so much pain." So I start putting on this act and I start shaking like I am now. And the doctor tells her, "We're gonna go run another ultrasound to see a clear picture of what's going on down there for the cramping." We go for the ultrasound and they see that I had 2 ovarian cysts. Okay, yeah, fine. That's probably what was causing my cramping. And I come back to the room and I'm nervous, and I can sense that my mom knows something, but not what is really going on. But she's really good at knowing when I'm lying. And so that night I just kept going through pain, and the doctor said, "We're going to keep your daughter here to monitor her pain levels overnight and just see if her cysts multiply or if they rupture, because if they do, we might have to go in and evacuate them, so surgically speaking." And so my mom leaves. I'm terrified. I text my boyfriend like I'm pregnant. And I didn't get that response that I wanted from him. I wanted him to be there. I wanted him to, drop everything that he was doing to come to my rescue and tell me like everything was going to be okay. I'm going to be here for whatever. But he was too busy living his life, working, worrying about himself. It wasn't that big of a deal for him. Meanwhile, I was petrified. So the night falls and I was going through more pain. I was trying to get up to walk, I remember, and I was alone, and I called the nurse because I couldn't walk, and I was just, again, in so much pain. So then I was rushed into surgery. I had to call my mom and tell her, I'm going into surgery, but she couldn't come visit me because it was past visiting hours. And the doctor miraculously gave me this option, "Look at this. Do you want to continue with this pregnancy?" I told her no. And she told me, "Well, your hormone levels aren't multiplying the way that they should, so you're probably going to have a miscarriage." So that made me feel better. Like, okay, it's out of my control, kind of. And she says, "Well, we're going in to remove your ovarian cysts because they multiplied and they ruptured, which was what was causing the pain. And I can perform a D&C, which is an evacuation and an abortion." I thought, oh, perfect. I'm going under for one thing, but they're doing 2 things at once. I'll wake up. I'll just have to say that I got surgery for my cyst. My mom won't know. My grandmother won't know. Nobody will know. Everything will be back to normal. My life will be okay. It's like I saw the light. The light came to me. So I signed away the consent form. I go under. I wake up. My mom's visiting me. And my boyfriend's there. He picks me up, takes me home. And I had to come back, I remember, 2 days later just to monitor how my hormones were doing because I had had the abortion. They wanted to make sure that everything was going back to normal. And I go back with my best friend at the time, who's still my best friend. And he has no idea what's going on. And he's just sitting there with me. And the same doctor comes back in and says, I don't know what's going on, but you're still pregnant. And I said, holy shit, I'm still pregnant. What is this devil baby that doesn't want to leave me? Like, why are you trying to stay with me when I'm trying to get rid of you and continue on with my life the way I needed it to go on? I needed to graduate high school and go on to college. And so I freaked. I'm like, what do you mean that I'm still pregnant? And the doctor says, yeah, your hormones are increasing, as if the baby is still not the baby, but the fetus is still in your uterus. And I didn't know what to think. I'm like, okay, yeah, you gave me 1D and C. What do we have to do now? And I went back under for another ultrasound. And the nurse is like, I can't see anything. There's nothing in your uterus. Why are your hormones increasing that the way they should be? The doctor comes back in and tells me, yeah, we can't see anything in your uterus. I don't know what's happening. Hours pass by. My anxiety is at 1,000. I'm freaking out. I tell my best friend so he can sit there and like hold my hand or like distract me. And the nurse comes back in with the doctor and they tell me, we consulted the head of something. I don't remember. And we might think that you have an ectopic pregnancy, which is when the embryo is growing outside of the uterus, which can rupture your fallopian tube, rupture it. And if that happens, you can die. So I'm getting all of this thrown at me. I was just like, I was in here for some ovarian cyst pain, and then I found out I'm pregnant, and then you perform a D&C, and this thing won't leave, and now you're telling me I'm still pregnant after you did the procedure, and it might not even be in my uterus. So then the doctor tells me your best option right now is to get a shot of methotrexate, which will kill the egg and make it get out of where it's not supposed to be. And I was like, yes, this is the best this is the best way for this to all be over. So I remember I was in my robe and I had to bend over while the nurse gave me the shot of methotrexate on one of my butt cheeks. And I thought I was free. I'm like, yes, finally, I can go home now. At this point, I was still contemplating whether I should have told my mother, I'm getting this huge drug. I was actually pretty terrified because the doctor had warned me that this is a less form of chemo, like a very, very small dosage of chemo. So I'm like, what chemicals or like, what are you putting in my body? And I go home. School's starting, so I have to get ready to start going back to school. And I go back for a check-in 3 days later. I don't even know what to call it, but I was still pregnant after this happened. So I was just so overwhelmed. I remember leaving the hospital and just crying on the sidewalk. I felt so hopeless. I'm like, I tried all of this. I've always tried to do the right thing, and now this is happening. We tried 2 different forms, and my abortion didn't work. The methotrexate didn't work. What is going on? At this point, I had to tell my mother because I I needed to get another DNC happen. And I needed someone there to consent and bring me home under all the anesthesia and all. So I go home and I see my mom and I tell her, she was cleaning the house. She was in a very good mood. It was a Saturday. And I told her, Ma, I need to tell you something. And I told her I'm pregnant. And she looked at me with these cold eyes, like she had just been shot, or like something so tragic had happened that she couldn't breathe. And she walked away. She went to her room, and moments later she came back and she said, I knew. Because that moment that the nurse had said, how much does your mother know, in the emergency room, just gave it away. But she couldn't believe it. So that was a very hard moment for me and for my mother and I. But she said, I'm going to support you with whatever you need to do at this point. It's going to be another miscarriage or a miscarriage because my hormones were still increasing, not at the right rate, but they were still increasing. So she supported me in going to get another abortion to terminate the pregnancy. And we went to the doctor's on Monday morning at like 8 o'clock in the morning. And I get undressed. My mother's there. She's waiting in the waiting room. I go under. I was actually, I think I was a little sedated, but I was still aware of what was happening. So I sat on a bed and they pulled me close to the edge of the bed. And they put a blanket over my legs, but I could still see what the doctor was kind of doing. And after the procedure, I saw what the I don't know, embryo was, or I don't know what to call it, in a basket. And it looked like a booger. It was just white and small, and I remember thinking, like, wow, all this trouble for this little tiny thing that could have been a baby but wasn't developing at the right way it should have. And at that point I was 3 weeks pregnant. That's why the doctors couldn't see anything during the ultrasounds. And there was another family there who was speaking Spanish to my mother, and I came out of the procedure room dressed, ready to go home. I'm going to call a taxi with my mom, and the woman who was getting her tubes tied, she looked over to me and said, "So young, so early, why are you doing this?" And I remember just crying, and my mom just like grabbed me and we just left. Because I was young. I still consider myself young, and it was something that I still don't understand, that I've been trying to repress as a memory. Like, yeah, that happened, okay, life goes on, because I need life to go on. Because just the possibility of, at that point, if I were to have a baby, was terrifying. And I kept the ultrasound picture for about a year in my wallet, because I still kind of wanted to remind myself of what had happened, but I never wanted to speak about it. For my boyfriend at the time, it was nothing. He had actually had experienced that many times with other women. And for me, I'm like, I felt like my innocence was taken away. Like I had done such a horrible thing. I felt so alone, and I still feel so alone on my experience, because with all my friends, they always say, you know, you're the wisest friend out of our friend group, or you're the one that we can always come to when something happens. Well, I felt like I had no one to go to when that happened. I couldn't talk to my mom. I couldn't talk to my friends. I felt like nobody could support me and give me the right comfort that I needed to heal.
Do you need a moment?
I think I'm okay.
Take a few breaths.
Yeah. It's so hard to put into words why I'm crying. I think about, to be honest, sometimes I think about, like, well, when I have my first child, what am I gonna think? This would have been my second child, or even though I know that my first pregnancy was made out to be a miscarriage. But it was such a defining moment in my life. Again, because I felt that at that point I had done everything right. In previous scares, you know, I would take the plan B or go to the doctors. I was always the worrywart. I was always the cautious girl. I was always... And then I thought, why me? Like, you know, why would God let this happen to me? If I've always been that good girl, why did I deserve this to happen to me? I didn't have just, it was meant out to be that one abortion under the same time that I was getting those ovarian cysts removed. It was supposed to be a one-time thing, one memory, just one memory. But it pegged out to be a series of events that defined me and will always define me and will continue to be a part of my life and my thoughts. And like, I'm glad I get to sit here and share this story, because for so long I thought, you know, I was the bad girl who just a mistake had happened. But that doesn't make me a bad girl. And I think, like, with sharing the story, I can finally accept that I'm not a bad girl. I'm not a bad woman. It's a part of my life. It was just something that happened. A memory that I'll remember, and an event that is so dear to me, but it doesn't make me a bad person. I think I'm done.
Have you spoken to your mother about it afterwards?
No, my mom is my biggest fan, and she wants me to be as, you know, career-wise as successful that I could be. And my cousin and I are the only two women in our family that have not had children thus far, and so that is something my mom is totally against. She was very supportive and terminating the pregnancy because she did not want me to be a teen mother. And I, as well, did not want to be a teen mother. And so I viewed it as a part of the trap. Like, if I were to have this baby and continue with this pregnancy, I would be stuck in this cycle that my family and everybody that I know has been stuck in. So she was very supportive of me terminating the pregnancy, but it's not something that we speak about after. And to this day, we haven't spoken about it. She will make smart remarks. Like, she's on edge about it. If my mom counts the days till my pregnancy, till my period when I'm home. Like, she'll be like, did you get your period this month? Or, are you taking care of yourself? Are you using condoms? You know you're sexually active. And I'm like, yes, Mom, I am. She's like, okay, because we can go to the doctors. And that's as far as it goes. But we don't reflect on what happened. Because it's seen as like something that should just never be spoken about. Just keep that dirty little secret to yourself. No one has to know. And that's also what makes it really hard for me, because I'm very close with my grandmother. My grandma's very religious, and she still thinks I'm not sexually active, and I'm going to stay pure until I marry. And for her, vision of marriage is like in the temple. But sometimes I want to tell her, because I'm tired of holding up this pretty good little girl who never does anything bad image. And I want her to love me and accept me for who I am and the decisions that I've made and define me of who I am. But it's never spoken about.
Is it something you would like to talk to your mother about?
Yeah. I think it would... Parts of me wants to say yeah, but I'm afraid of how the conversation will go. I would want her to be understanding, to know it wasn't something that I was carelessly doing because I was trying to avoid pregnancy at all costs. But I think it would probably bring us closer. Like, she would understand the way I think and who makes me, and like what makes me who I am. Yeah.
Have you shared it with other people?
I have. It took me a really long time, actually. Well, so when the event happened, the first person I thought about was my school guidance counselor, who had been there for me since the first moment I stepped through her office. And all she could say is, I'm so sorry. I can't believe this happened to you. More than once, because I had to go back so many times. And she kept saying, oh, what a horrible thing. And at that moment, it felt like such a horrible thing. Like, it felt like, why me? Again, that blaming. And I couldn't believe it had happened to me. And then it wasn't until recently that I spoke about it with my current boyfriend. And looking back, I sometimes wish it had happened with him, because I know it probably would have turned out different, just because he's so caring and he would have done anything to be there with me, guide me through it, talk about it, think about it, have a discussion, talk about what was happening like before the event, before I ran to the decision, okay, I'm going to terminate this pregnancy. And then afterwards, we could have had dialogue, and it felt like it was a shared thing, because I didn't get pregnant on my own. And so that made me feel more comforting. But yeah.
Well, how did you feel when you told him?
It felt good. It really did, because he's a great listener, and he made a comfortable space for me. He wasn't distracted, and all his attention was on me, just listening to me, and it felt good, but I know I wanted for someone to listen to me who could relate, to tell me that I wasn't alone, that I wasn't a bad person for what had happened, that these things happen all the time, and women have to make these decisions all the time, and that life can continue, and everything will be all right. And that's all I wanted to hear, that everything will be all right.
You said that after your abortion, you kept the ultrasound for a year in your wallet. What did you do with it?
I had this special wallet that I kept all my special things. I don't know. It was like movie tickets, or my debit card and my ID, and pictures of my godsons and goddaughters. And it's this purple wallet from a trip when I went abroad. And I kept the picture in one of the back slots where cash is supposed to be kept. And I would usually take peeks at it and think about it, and touch the ultrasound and remember my memories. And after a year, I don't remember what triggered the event. I think the wallet might have broke. So then I kept the photo inside my pillowcase. Yeah, and sometimes I would go inside my pillowcase and still look at it and think about it, especially late at night when I had time to reflect on my life. And then I think it was moving into college. I thought, fresh life, new beginning. I can still keep it with me in my memory. But eventually I disposed the photo, and I think I might have just thrown it in the trash. Yeah.
How did that make you feel?
Kind of strong. It was a different way to remember the event. It wasn't like, oh, I'm forgetting it, but it was like, okay, I don't have to think of how sad it was for me, but more so the lesson that I got from it, and what I can do with it now. I can, take steps to feel more confident in what had happened in the abortion. And so, yeah, it was just like, it was a fresh beginning.
Mm.
Yeah.
Since coming to college and being in a new community,
right,
have you felt like you could be open about your experience, especially on campus or with new friends that you've met? Because you did have this fresh start, but how did you feel about now telling that story in this new place?
That's a great question, because my experience thus far in my community on my college campus has been like a roller coaster. And to me, the way I view my campus is a conservative space. So I actually did not feel so empowered to take the stand. In certain spaces, I feel it is conservative, and I'm always afraid of the backlash, but not the backlash from people that I don't know, but the backlash that I might get from people who are my friends and claim to love me. And, I don't want that to change anything, but I don't know what their beliefs are, or their thoughts on abortion are. So I actually haven't felt empowered to share it here. I think more so what I meant as a fresh start was just the perspective and the way that I viewed the event. Before, it was so shameful, something I had to hide. And now I can feel okay, if the right people or the right person, that I can meet them, and I can feel yeah, I did have an abortion, and this is why, and this is how, because it wasn't a one-step process, and this is how it's making me feel, or how I think about it. And I hope, and I want to be that support for women, or for my friends who are conflicted in the issue. I'm not going to say I'm going to support them and, and to get it if they don't want it, but I want to be that comfort for them so they know that they're not alone.
So have you, besides your boyfriend, have you told anyone else on campus?
Yeah. I've told 2 of my friends on campus. One I told before we actually came on campus. I was upset with something that had triggered it with my ex-boyfriend. We were like in a heated argument and my friend was right there. And then I was like, oh my God, after everything that we've been through, and I had to get this abortion on my own. Like, you weren't there for me, not even physically, but emotionally. Like, you weren't supporting me. And now you're just being a jerk. So I was like fed up. And in the heat of the moment, I just opened up and I told her, I was like, well, here's a layer that you do not know about me. I had to get an abortion and here's why, and blah, blah, blah. And I started crying. And my friend was like, cold turkey, like, what? Who would have known? Oh my goodness. And she was trying to be as accommodating as she could. She's very sweet. And I just left it at that. We've never spoken about it. I've never even said, hey, remember that time I blew up on you in Chipotle and I just told you I had an abortion? like crying at the table, and then we go in the bathroom. But I think she would be open to discussion if I were to mention it, but I don't know. I think she doesn't know how I feel about it still to like talk about it. And then my current roommate, actually, who I spoke about before coming here, I was like, you remember that time? I think I told you that I had an abortion. And it was like tiptoeing kind of around it. And she's like, yeah, I remember you told me this. And she's like, oh my goodness, you are so brave. You're transcending. You're like an advocate. Go stand up for yourself and for other women. So that there made me feel great. But when I had told her, it was still an emptiness. It's like a one-sided reaction. Like, I'm telling you all of this. Bam, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to try to console me and tell me, I'm so sorry, which is not something right now, I think looking back, that it has to be, I'm so sorry for what happened to you. And that makes me feel good. Because I don't have to be ashamed anymore. Sorry, I get like so sidetracked. But yeah. And those are the only people that I've told.
You mentioned your ex-boyfriend again, and then I was just wondering, like, it seemed like he was not very supportive of you during that time. Have you ever been able to talk to him about your feelings and your experience with the abortion afterward?
Mm-hmm. After the abortion, I remember I was home because I was on bed rest for like a week or something because of the surgery, not because of the abortion. And I had called him and we were just talking. And he's like, oh, I'm so upset. My car broke down. I'm not making it to work. This ranting. And I blew up again. I was just like, well, thank you for asking me how I'm doing after I just had an abortion, which was like 5 abortions in my mind because I had 2 and then the methotrexate and all this stuff. And he still didn't get it. It's like he didn't get why I was so upset. Like, I wanted to have that discussion and say, oh, you made this decision. You had to go through all of this. Let me be here for you. This is not only on you. And still to this day, we haven't spoken about it. I don't think now at the point I am in my life that I need to talk about it with him anymore. But definitely back when it was just fresh and when he was the one that my boyfriend, the one that was supposed to be there for me and just wasn't. And so we ended up breaking up, and then I don't know how we got back together, but we did, and then we finished the relationship. But thank goodness, now that I'm healing, I don't need that conversation from him because I feel like it would be another way to just be dependent on him again and keep that kind of like anger. Yeah. I'm in a good place.
Good. Yeah. Why do you want to share your story?
That's a nice question. Why do I want to share my story? I want to share my story for myself, to feel free. I don't want to have to keep tabs of like, oh, the forbidden thing that I can't speak about. Or like, oh my God, did that just slip out of my mouth? Am I, I want to be free and speak about these things and not feel ashamed at all of the decision that I made, because it's, for me personally, it's not a shameful decision. It was something that I had to do, and I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't done it. And I want that known. I don't want it to be like, oh, look at the girl who had an abortion. It shouldn't be a stigmatized event. It shouldn't be, women should not be ostracized because of getting an abortion. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to share it with the Abortion Diaries and with yourself, because I agree a lot with your mission, and I want women to know that they are not alone, and things are difficult, but there will always be a light at the end of the tunnel. And I want women to get hope from my story, to listen to it and hopefully feel like, wow, I wasn't the only one that went through that. And so I also want to feel that too. I wasn't the only one. I'm not alone. I want to empower. It's like I want to empower this community of women. And for those also who have not had abortions, to understand the factors that might enforce it or affect it, the thoughts that I'm a regular person who had to make this decision, and I shouldn't be treated like I'm not a human. And yeah, that's why I want to share my story.
Is there anything else you'd like to share?
This feels good. I'm happy to be here. I'm a little emotional because it's so dear, and I think about all the times that I had to cry and shun myself like I was a horrible person, and I can finally feel confident and talk about my experience and say I'm still the person who I was, and it's only going to make me better. So thank you, for listening to me, and yeah, I just want everyone to know that they are not alone.
How are you feeling right now?
I wasn't expecting all these emotions. Excuse me. Oh. I feel a little hurt. I'm not gonna lie. Oh. Like I couldn't be all of me, because all of me wasn't going to be accepted. But I know this is like a good start to a healing process, and accepting what I did, and staying true to myself and my actions, and advocating for myself, and not letting anyone throw shame towards me and what I had to do and go through. But I feel good.
because we talked about you being nervous.
Yeah.
How are you feeling now that you shared it? And we've talked about like your feelings about worrying about being in a small community and for someone finding out. So how do you feel now that you shared it? And I don't know, how do you feel?
I feel when you asked me that question, the song "I got a pocket full of sunshine" just came in my mind. I feel really good. It's like an open book. Like I got a story to tell, and I want to tell my story. Like if I could have, like if this was a story time with hot cocoa, like it would be like a good juicy story time. But being in a small community in the like where I am, there still is some worry. You know, especially with professors. I don't know what their experiences with abortion are, and I don't want that to impact in a negative way the way they see me. But then if it does, you know, that's what comes with it. There's always going to be people who have opposing feelings and different views. Especially recently, I went with my classroom to do research on democracy and religion in DC, and abortion was a hot topic that we asked to religious advocates about, and is that something that they lobby about to government. And there was one place we interviewed that was pro-life, and a peer of mine was also pro-life. And in that space, I didn't feel like I had a voice. I didn't feel like I could sit here and be like, you know, well, I am a person, a student, a woman. I am someone who has had an abortion, and look how real it is for me. It's so real for me, and you guys want to paint it as like such a monster act. And I think that's what I'm afraid of encountering people like that, especially here. But I feel a little more at ease, a little more prepared now that I had the first step in sharing my story with someone who actually wants to listen and can, you know, empathize with me. I feel a little bit more prepared for that battle if it were ever to come across.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to listen to more of our stories, head over to our website, theabortiondiary.com, subscribe on iTunes, or listen on SoundCloud or Stitcher Radio. If you would like to share your own abortion story, visit us on our webpage, click on Share Your Abortion Story, and send me a message. To learn more about how to support The Abortion Diary, head over to our website and click on the Donate button. You can also support The Abortion Diary by telling your friends. Following The Abortion Diary on Twitter @Abortion Diary, on Instagram @The Abortion Diary, and on Facebook. You can also follow me on Instagram @The Abortion Diarist. Stay tuned for the next story.